Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is debunk, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Qatar. Thank you so much for your suggestion, and my apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. This is one of our limitations of being in this online environment. So let's take a moment now and review some of the definitions or the way we can use this verb. Debunk really just has one primary meaning, and that is to bring to light the falseness of either some myth, some idea, or a belief. So here you might think of rumors, right? Information that gets shared, maybe passed through social media or verbally to one another. But when someone is able to demonstrate or show this information is not accurate, we can use this verb to describe that process. For now, you should know that debunk is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, you're going to add ing, and that forms debunking. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, debunk, ends in an unvoiced K sound. This means the ed ending is just going to make a T sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable when I say it. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this: debunked, debunked. Okay. Now, we don't have any phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can move straight into our verb tense practice. Today, I thought we could review the past perfect and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions. But what makes it different than just the simple past tense is we're stressing that this action was completed before another action in the past or before a certain point in time. You might notice that past perfect has two P's in its name. This can help you remember that you'll need two parts to make your verb. We'll be using the past form of have, which is had, and then our participle form of the verb. And the nice thing about making sentences in the past perfect is that structure is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, you'll see subject, had, and then the participle form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example. City officials had debunked the claims, but candidates continued to repeat the falsehoods. Okay. This was something that came up a lot during the 2024 elections here in the United States. There were certain pieces of information, myths, if you will, that one candidate in particular continued to repeat and repeat. Now, this sentence in particular wants to note that city officials, right, state something is not true. They provide evidence showing this thing is false. But the action of repeating it was ongoing there. It continued. So even after, right, sometimes rumors continue to spread. Now let's look at making a negative past perfect sentence. To do this, you'll start with your subject, then you'll use had not, and then the participle. You might also encounter the contraction hadn't, like in my example here. They hadn't debunked the claims quickly enough. Right? What I would expect to come after a sentence like this is sort of what happened or how the information spread, maybe what damage it caused. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, start with had, then you're going to have your subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. Had the governor's office debunked the video earlier? Right? So here, maybe we're trying to understand the timeline of when certain things occurred. Now let's move on and we'll talk a little bit about the present perfect progressive. I always like to note that some teachers and textbooks call this the present perfect continuous, and that is just fine. It means exactly the same thing. The reason I say present perfect progressive is I want my students to remember we're going to need three parts to make our verb. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but the reason most commonly people are using the present perfect progressive is because they're talking about an action that started in the past, it's continuing into the present, and it may even continue into the future. Many times, we're stressing how long this particular action has been ongoing. Now, this is a verb tense that we need to pay attention to our subject. The subject will change our form just a little bit. So if our subject happens to be I, you, we, or they, we're going to use have, been, our participle B-E-E-N, and then the ing form the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we want to use has been, and the ing form the verb. Let's take a look at an example. The organization has been debunking online hoaxes for some years. Again, we've got that duration of time. That's the focus here. And there are a number of websites that try and do that to share better information because, unfortunately, there is a lot of junk out there. Now let's look at making a negative present perfect progressive sentence. To do this, again, pay attention to your subject. It'll come first. Then we'll use either has not or have not, depending on what that subject is, followed by the participle been, and then the ing form the verb. Here's another example. He hasn't been debunking those notions. Okay. Again, as I looked for real examples of this verb being used, it came up a lot in connection to campaigns for office here in the United States and occasionally in other countries as well. And so the article I borrowed this sentence from was really stressing how they saw it as a candidate's responsibility to correct things that their team or other supporters were repeating, especially when that information was inaccurate. It was completely false. Now, let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, you want to start with have or have, then your subject will come next, then the participle been, and then the ing form the verb. Here's another example. Has someone been debunking the harmful lies about immigrants and crime? Okay. This is a really hot topic and has been for some time in the United States. And it is something where a lot of falsehoods are spread. Frequently, we have to ask kind of who is checking this or providing more accurate information to bring about so many falsehoods related to this topic. And just so I can put it out there, immigrants in the United States commit far fewer crimes than citizens. That is a true statement. Now, let's spend one more moment here looking at, today it's really just a word that is related to our verb debunk, and it's the noun debunker. That suffix er is generally telling us a person or thing that, and we can go back to our root word. So here, it's a person who exposes the falseness of some idea or belief. An example of this. The moderator had to serve as a debunker throughout the debate. So here, maybe we have multiple candidates repeating false ideas or beliefs. And the person whose job it was to ask questions and make sure everybody was getting an opportunity to speak also had this dual role of sharing which statements were false. Thanks again for the suggestion, Qatar, for today's verb, and I thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day.